Hello, and thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Corner Office. My special guest today, all the way from down under in Australia, is Ted Horner, owner of E. Horner Associates Consulting. Ted is here to tell us all about what's going on in APAC and what he's seeing in the industry today. Ted's been around for a long time, knows a lot of people, and has a lot of great, insightful information. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Ted, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I just think I'd remind your viewers that it's 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning here, and I'm doing this interview prior to going to play golf in about an hour's time.
Yeah, the commute from up in the space station where you're at must be something else.
Yeah, you could say that, yes. In fact, someone said to me the other day, you should have instead of having a round earth in the back just to get people coming, you should have a flat earth, you know, that'll get people going, you know, thinking about what the hell's he doing, anyway. But I do like your background, that's very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the Angeles Golf Course out of Los Angeles. It's actually where you and I met, and as I was saying a few minutes ago, you played a great game of golf, and my game pretty much sucked.
COVID-19 means now I'm playing twice a week. And I've reduced my handicap by 3 strokes over the last couple of months.
Wow.
What
are you drinking today?
I'm drinking this morning. You know, I'd love to have. I do like my beer, but probably at 6 o'clock in the morning is a trifle earlier. So I'm having something boring, like a boring cup of English breakfast tea.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Myself, well, you know the old saying, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so it's actually 5 o'clock here in Halifax. So I've got myself a morning drink. It's a tequila sunrise. So,
wow, I'm impressed.
So tell me your best joke or pun that you got for me, Ted.
Okay. Why does a golfer always carry a spare pair of trousers?
Why?
In case he gets a hole in one.
Yeah. Swinging.
Pretty corny, I know. Look, unfortunately, golf, when I was doing member of Toastmasters many years ago, this is many years ago, the one speech that I could never master was a humorous speech. So I think that if you're a poor teller of jokes, don't bother. Yep. The other joke is a guy was finishing his round of golf, right, and he was played so terribly, he said, I'm about to throw myself in the lake by the 18th hole. And his caddy whipped around and said, well, hey, something you haven't been doing all day, can you keep your head down? So anyway, we could go on. There's lots of golf jokes, but I'll quit while I'm ahead with 2 pretty ordinary jokes.
Yeah. Well, those 2 were pretty good. They were actually par for the course, so I think that's good.
That's a good line.
All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes then.
Yep.
Of course, you know you're in Australia, so you're seeing a little bit of a different cycle of the COVID-19 than the rest of us over here in North America, where we're kind of getting a little bit of a bombardment of it. But you guys are, from what I understand, starting to come out a little bit more. So can you tell me what you're seeing over there in APAC?
Yeah, look, we're unfortunately not quite as good as New Zealand, which is held up because they've almost eliminated it. But they basically, because they did lockdown from day one and pretty severe lockdowns. Right now, as of yesterday, we've got 120 deaths in about 10,000 cases. Our international borders are closed. No one can, apart from returning Australians, the only people who come back to Australia are returning residents, and they then have to self-quarantine in a hotel for 14 days, and the government pays those expenses, and about 300,000, about of a million Australians who work or live overseas, about more than half of those have returned over the last few months and coming from countries all around the world. So our industry is leading on to the state of industry. Look, industry is doing it tough. I'm not going to say in that respect we're unique. With our borders closed, last year we had something the order of about 8 or 9 million international tourists. The larger percentage of those tourists were Chinese and Indian. Well, no one from either of those countries, or for any other country for that matter, is allowed to travel. So what we've just had now is opening up of our domestic borders to other states. And we've just had our mid-term school holidays, so a lot of people have taken the time to take their kids. So the government is not going to open its international borders until first quarter next year. Qantas, our national carrier, is not going to be doing any international flights until the middle of next year. As an aside, it has 12 A380 A380 planes that hold 500. All 12 of them are actually in the Mojave Desert. But I'm sure you know there's a giant plane graveyard between Scottsdale and Tucson.
Yep.
So most of their planes, they've just retired after 50 years. They're in the last of the entire fleet of Jumbo 7. So outside of getting to New Zealand, where my mother-in-law lives, which we hope they'll open the borders for us in the next month or so, we're going nowhere fast. In fact, I would not have been able this year to travel for high tech, even if it had been held, although we now know it's going to be virtualised.
Yep.
But the other problem for everybody is, and my problem as well, is not even finding a flight, but more importantly, anyone who travels in the world and has a COVID-19 issue has no insurance. You cannot get travel insurance because, and a lot of people, all these cruise guys and all these people pushing out saying, buy now, go now.
Yeah.
Once the WHO mandated it was a global pandemic, all past, present and future insurance policies for anything related to COVID-19, you have no insurance.
Wow.
And it's something that nobody's talking about. Right? Our tour operators here are selling up tours for next year or the year after, and you can change and all this stuff, but no one's talking about insurance. But anyway, it's a problem for the international hotels in the three biggest cities in Australia, Melbourne, Brisbane and Sydney. They're going to be bumping along, I reckon, at 30-40% for another 12 months because, COVID-19 has done exactly the same thing probably in your country, is that Zoom now is the effective means of doing business.
Yep.
So I now believe that a lot of people may never return to work out offices again. And a lot of people might say, you know what, as much as we love face-to-face, maybe we won't approve expenses for 15, 20, 25 people to get on a plane and go to something like a high-tech.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the other thing as well is I feel sorry for hotels moving forward, that the big conference hotels, they may not be filled again anytime soon, because if there are any events on with social distancing and all the other things, a lot less people, if they could, will be able to travel, if indeed they can, to these events. The state of New South Wales, that's where I live, is actively promoting people, support the local tourism, because one of the problems we've had in New South Wales is last year we had a drought.
Yeah.
Then over Christmas, New Year, in the Christmas New Year period, we had these devastating bushfires. And of course, now on top of that, and they've had a triple whammy, then COVID-19. So a lot of people would drive one place called the South Coast, and it's 1 to 2 hours drive south of Sydney.
Yeah.
Well, those guys, up until a month or so ago, had no people there because, as I said, drought, drought, and then bushfires, which are pretty devastating after COVID. So the problem for our industry is that a lot of small businesses may not come back. They may struggle, right? So, I think what our government's doing, it sounds similar to yours, is encouraging people to get out and go and visit these places. So, if I can't travel overseas, which would seem apparent that I cannot, then I'm going to be going to some places in Australia, because don't forget, Australia is the same landmass almost as the United States of America.
Yep.
It takes almost as long to fly from Perth to Sydney as it does from LA to New York. The only difference, we only have 25 million people, but there are lots of places. It's a big country, it's the driest continent in the world, so there are places in outback Australia, on the west coast of Australia, where I will probably be taking holidays over the next 12 months because I cannot get on a plane and go somewhere overseas.
Yeah.
And which is a little sad, because in March this year, my wife and I celebrated 40 years of marriage. Oh. We'd booked a big trip to Europe. We were going to do a river cruise in Russia from St. Petersburg to Moscow. We were going to do a cruise down the Norwegian coast, and we were going to finish up doing a cruise around the Baltic. And we were going to be away as of next month for 5 weeks. So obviously that's all cancelled, and hopefully we might be able to do it next year. But I mean, to that point, and what the biggest issue I see in all the conversation, the uncertainty in knowing, is there ever going to be a vaccine? And for a lot of older people who are vulnerable to COVID-19, my wife included, she's not going to be that keen to get on a plane somewhere if there's not a vaccine or there's some pill you can take to minimise, right? So that's the first thing. And I worry about that. The International Association of Travel Agents is saying pre-COVID travel, international, may not get back to middle of 2024.
Yeah.
So if that is indeed the case, that's, the two worst industries affected by COVID, in my opinion, the hospitality industry and the travel industry.
Yep, I would 100% agree. Do you have any recommendations at all, when they open back up? Like, is there anything you guys are seeing there that's a little bit different?
I've been watching a lot of webinars and stuff on safety and, all these new sanitation programs that have been recommended by the ALHA and others. We don't quite have the same incidence of COVID-19, but that doesn't mean to say that the big international chains haven't put in certain practices to make guests feel safer, if that's the right word. All CapEx is being stood down for an indefinite period. As I said, I was asked this very question, when do you think it's going to finish? I was on a webinar with Honeywell a couple of weeks ago with the executives, and they asked me that question. I said, I really can't tell you, because I know you've got, there's heaps, billions of money being spent around the world, 15, 20, 30 people, different organisations trying to come up with a vaccine. But as someone pointed out to us recently, news thing, there's still no actual cure for HIV. Yes, there's drugs to minimise it, but there's no magic bullet or magic pill. So we'll have to wait and see. I know the reality is, at the end of the day, is everyone is trying. A lot of hotels in Sydney are closed because it's cheaper to close, which has had a devastating effect on employment, I might say. But I think most of them are trying to focus, on capturing the domestic tourist. The problem for people in Sydney, you don't typically go and stay at a hotel in downtown Sydney when you live in New South Wales.
Last question, of course, is where do you see the industry going in the next few years? And that being the technology industry.
Oh, the technology industry? I see it struggling. Sadly, I predict that because most of us rely on SaaS revenue, a lot of hotels, before they even were contacted by their vendor, have basically gone to the bank and shut down the automatic debits. So when the payments are processed, they don't get processed. I've heard, talking to some consultants, and I've got one of these plans with my local carrier. I can call people around the world, including in the plan. So I've been talking to people. I know a lot of startups in America have had their VC funding cut because VCs are deciding that maybe they see throwing good money after bad, so they're redirecting their funds elsewhere. So I can see, my prediction is, I see a lot of smaller companies, sadly, maybe going out of business and or cutting heavily their staff. And as a result of that, what's happened is R&D will suffer. Right, now, big companies like Oracle and Infor and the big PBX suppliers and the big point of sale vendors and stuff, they're probably going to survive. But I'm interested in what Jeff Badowski had an interview with a VC capital group about a month ago, and he said that he felt that moving forward, that he reckons that COVID-19 will force our industry to look at everything in a different way. We all know post-COVID, this industry is never going to say, I'm going to say it because everyone else is contactless and touchless. I think what Jeff said was that he felt that the big box vendors may struggle to come up with new and innovative ways, and we may see the arrival of some brand new players who have got a completely different solution, right? I mean, I just finished a report for an owner of a big hotel here in Sydney on mobile key. And part of the rationale for investing in mobile key, apart from the fact that Hilton is really pushing it like crazy, is that we might see a very serious a large increase in mobile key usage for people who want to bypass any points of contact.
Contactless entry,
On the one hand, opportunities for maybe new companies arriving in the marketplace at the back end, But the challenge for any vendor is the uncertainty of knowing when we're going to be on top of COVID-19. And you and I could be sitting here having a conversation, but in 12 months' time, still ruminating about the state of the industry.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's the thing. It keeps changing every day, right? Or not changing every day.
I know in a long-winded way, I worry about the state of our industry. I really do, because we have a yearning to travel, but are we going to put our yearning for travel about our requirement to be safe?
So Ted, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for talking about what's going on in APAC and everything else, and definitely appreciate your perspective. So,
no worries. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode of The Corner Office. I hope you've enjoyed it. Special thanks to Ted Horner for being my guest. He had a lot of great information about APAC, and I hope you found it useful. Additionally, for more information on Ted or his company, please visit his LinkedIn information below. For more information on Safety NetAccess, our products and our services, please go to www.safetynetaccess.com. As well, if you like what we're doing here on The Corner Office, please subscribe. It would mean a lot. Until next time, be safe, be healthy, be well, and hey, don't forget to be happy.
I'm going to stand up now, because you might want to. If I stand up,
get that t-shirt in.
No, it's not working.
Oh, just a little. There you go. Golf
Right.
bloke. Yeah.
You might want to put that in somewhere if you can.